They didn't go through trauma therapy after the war. It's not. What if I told you that this whole propaganda thing did not even start because of the war? What if I told you that there was a culture of propagandizing long before independence? And if, for instance, if you check out Azikiwe's speech in 1949 in Aba at the Ibo State Union World Congress, if you check out that speech, you will understand where that thing is coming from. That's 49. If you now go back to see what they did before 47, you can also see, oh, the speech is not the genesis. Trust me, the speech is not the genesis. Listen, there was a meeting in 44. That speech was in 49, and it's bad enough. But there was a meeting in 44 of the Ibo State Union. I mean, guys, with all due respect, this is not hate towards anybody. We're discussing history. There was a meeting in 1944, and the things they wanted to achieve in that meeting, they published. Although they circulated that amongst themselves. But you know, the way life works. Anyway, that thing came out. By 45, a year after that meeting, was when Onyema said what he said. When he said, the Igbo domination of Nigeria is only a matter of time. That's 45. By 47, Sir Arthur Richards, the Governor General of Nigeria, was complaining about the complaints of the Easterners, specifically the Igbos, saying that they clamor for more, but they contribute the least. That's in 47. By 49, Azikiwe is having a speech where he's claiming that they are being victimized in Nigeria and that they are giving so much, they are contributing a lot of taxes. You compare that with what the Governor General said, saying that Arthur Richards was our Governor General at the time, saying that they contribute the least, but they want the most. In other words, what you discover is this victimization, marginalization rhetoric is not necessarily about whether it's true or not. It's a tool. It's a tool. If I complain that, you know what, may not be like say I just make something up. May I read something to you? Just wait. I'm just going to compare some things. And by the way, if you are Igbo here, sincerely, I'm trying to help you. I think you can become better. I think you can be accepted everywhere, but I think you have to fix. That issue is deep rooted. Just give me a second. I'm almost there. It's okay. So take a listen to this. This is Sir Arthur Richards, the Governor and Commander-in-Chief of Nigeria. And he's making this statement on 28th January 1947. If he's making this statement in 1947 January, it means that this thing he's complaining about did not start in 1947. Prof, if you know Igbo really well, you will tone down on being apologetic. I've said it several times. My being apologetic is not about Igbo, it's about me. Everybody has a mechanism in them that checks them. I don't say certain things because of myself. It's not because nobody cares about how people feel. It's just that there is you have to have a mechanism in you that cautions you, to be honest, because if you don't caution yourself, sometimes you're going to become something you don't like you become what you hate. That's why you don't hate at all right? But it's important to set the record straight. So what I'm doing is to set the record straight, not to show that I know them enough to want to do what you're thinking, but I can't do it because of who I am. All right, let me read something to you from Sir Arthur Richards. He was a governor and commander-in-chief of Nigeria, and this was at the meeting of the Colonial Affairs Study Group of the Empire Parliamentary Association, 20th January 1947. I found that the North, which pays its taxes almost as obediently as people do in England, and which contributes more than any other section of Nigeria to the general revenue, is the part of Nigeria which had the least spent on it by the central government. The eastern provinces, the part of Nigeria which is most vocal and which clamors and calls for more education and for more of everything, is the part which contributes less than the other two regions to the general revenue, and it is also the part upon which the government has been spending the most. Let's try and unpack this for a bit. You contribute the least, you clamor for more, but the government has been spending the most on you. It's like a baby. You know, children can become tyrants if you let them. If they know that if I do this, this is going to be what, if I do this to you, you're going to give me what I want. They already get that's sorted. So they continue to do it because they know that's the way to get what they want. It's not like the child is bad. It's like the child has found a formula. Whenever you hear we are being marginalized, we are being victimized, it's not today. This is 1947. The idea basically is that if I say it, after all, when I said it and I clamored, they gave me what I wanted. Therefore, it's a formula that works. Why should I change it? What and what did the government spend in the East, if I may ask? Bone, what and what did they not spend in the East? That's what you should be asking me. Your very first city was created by the British. And I think, I don't know if if you've had any other cities since then. Around the same time, the British created two cities in the Eastern region. Eastern region, not Iboland. One in Iboland, one outside Iboland. The one outside Iboland is Port Harcourt. Was created in 1912. They did the survey 1912, 1913, thereabout. And then they created Enugu from scratch. So if they did nothing to you, they gave you a city. But they gave you more than that, by the way. When you ask questions like this, just know that there are answers for them. What did they do for us? That's another thing. You guys just don't like the idea of gratitude. What did they do? What did they do? No, but I'm not going to read it. By the time you read the 49 speech, you hear, in fact, let me just read it. That was 47, Abi. 45, 2 years earlier, was when Onyema said the Igbo domination of Nigeria is only a matter of time. And then, you know what? I'm going to read a couple more. A bit like say, it says, the census misfortune, that happened in 1963, caused Wahala, and they were going to secede. By the way, in 1963, the Eastern region was going to secede out of Nigeria. But to be fair, they're not the first people to threaten to secede. We had the North in 1950, the West in 1953, and then the East in 1963. Then the first group that wanted to have a coup was also the East in 1964. Then there was another threat in 1966 by Dakaboro for Niger Delta. Then there was another threat in July of 66 by Murtala Mohammed and the Northerners trying to break Nigeria. Then there was the one in 67. So before the one in 64, after the census issues in 63, they released this particular statement in 64. It says the census misfortune and unavoidable circumstances. Please take a listen to this. So I'm not making anything up. This is from the Igbo National Caucus, a committee of the Ibo State Union. And by the way, the people who signed this, the name is going to come up again. So please remember the name. Two people signed this statement. One is Mbanugo. The other one is Mbadiwe. That Mbadiwe name, please remember that name because it's going to come up again. The census misfortune and unavoidable circumstances now endanger our 20-year struggle. This is 1964. Our 20-year struggle will be from 1944. I'll take it again. The census misfortune and unavoidable circumstances now endanger our 20-year struggle for the achievement of our objective. What's our objective, Emagbo? Enemies of our fatherland have alerted the decadent Yoruba and the dangers which now beset us when we have almost reached the goal, the promised land. You must no doubt remember that a similar indiscreet utterance by C.D. Onyema gave us no end of opposition by the Yoruba when he publicly stated that the domination of Nigeria by the Igbo is a question of time. Outwardly, all our official and unofficial utterances must adopt an opposite procedure, and we must always do our best to appear honorable and cooperative. Remember, a statesman's words do not have to agree with his acts. It's still plenty. May I stop for there for now? in this stuff that they put out, they talk about what they are going to do to Western Nigeria, what they're going to do to the Eastern minorities. As a matter of fact, just in case you did not know you're from the East, say in the East, the Efik, the Ibibio, and the Rivers tribes are still under complete control, even though their dreams for their own state have been completely shattered. They have plans for Ishekiri people, Urobo, Edo, Yoruba, Hausa. I'm not going to go into it today. Just to give you an idea that this is, they even acknowledge the fact that the man made the mistake saying what he said in 45. If you had a plan in 45 and you had someone in 40, sorry, you had a plan in 44. By the way, this goes back before 44, by the way. So let me just go back a little bit. 1920s or thereabout, I don't know the exact date, we had the Ibo State Union, being the very first socio-cultural group formed in Nigeria. They were the Ibibio. Late 30s to the Ibo State Union started their own, or Ibo Federal Union. They call themselves Ibo State Union or Ibo Federal Union, which is fine because just like Ibibio, it's like you gather your people together so you can form an identity, or form a union for your to represent your interests and things like that. But this is where I can now start giving you date. By 1943, they had been able to create a chapter of that group, Ibo State Union, in the UK, in London. In 1945, the Yoruba people, for the first time, created their own group in London. It's called Ẹgbẹ Ọmọ Odùduwà. Ẹgbẹ Ọmọ Odùduwà was supposed to do exactly what Ibo State Union was doing and what Ibo State Union was doing. However, far away London, when the gentlemen who founded Yoruba, Ẹgbẹ Ọmọ Odùduwà, when they started, the only group of Nigerians in the UK who were against Ẹgbẹ Ọmọ Odùduwà were the Igbos. They call them tribalistic. I've thought about it several times. I've not come to find a way to understand that phrase, that word, tribalistic, when I'm doing exactly what you are doing, but you are not tribalistic. They insulted the hell out of them. Got to a point, Yoruba people decided to have a meeting to discuss it. You know what? Give me a second. Since we're asking questions that's going to require me to open a number of books, let me get to, I'm going to read Papa's autobiography. We are going somewhere. I know where we are going. We are going to Kingston Badiwe. We are going to get the Ozumba Mbadiwe. Who knows the song? It's a very fine song. Ozumba Mbadiwe. Like I always say, this thing is not so much about history as it is about the present. And that's what makes it scary. It's not so much about, oh, it happened in the 40s. That's not the problem. It doesn't make sense to weaponize history. But in Nigeria's context, you have to understand history to know what's happening today. I've said it several times. Nigeria's history is like tomorrow's newspaper. Like if you understand Nigeria's history, nobody can gaslight you with anything. I'm almost there. All right. So this is from the autobiography of Chief Obafemi Awolowo. Papa traveled to the UK in 1944. Then in 45, a group of them decided to come together to do something really cool. But let me go back just a bit to give it context. On leaving the shores of Nigeria in August 1944, I resolved that I would have nothing to do with politics until I had finished my studies and made some money. I also resolved that before I again entered into politics, I would see to it that the Yorubas evolved an ethnic solidarity among themselves, just as the Ibibios and the Ibos had done, in order to ensure a strong and harmonious federal union among the peoples of Nigeria. We're speaking here, Papa Chief Obafemi Awolowo. In less than a year after I reached the United Kingdom, I set to work to translate my ideas into realities. A group of Yorubas, mostly students, Dr. Oni Akirele, Chief Abiodun Akirele, barrister at law and member of the House of Representatives, Mr. Akintola Williams, chartered accountant, Chief Ayotunde Rosiji, Federal Secretary of the Action Group. That's what they became in 60. So this book was written in 1960. So when you see the description of them as barrister at law, that's who they were by 1960. Okay, that'll be 15 years after the fact. So let me go back just a bit. A group of Yoruba, mostly students, Dr. Oni Akirele, Chief Abiodun Akirele, barrister at law, and member of the House of Representatives, Mr. Akintola Williams, chartered accountant, Chief Ayotunde Rosiji, Federal Secretary of the Action Group and member of the House of Representatives, and others, and I founded a Yoruba organization in London named the Egbe Ọmọ Odùduwà, meaning a society of the descendants of Oduduwa. In view of the hostility and controversy which had marked the birth of Ẹgbẹ Ọmọ Odùduwà and of the general misunderstanding which has existed ever since about the real intentions of this organization, I reproduce here in full the aims of the Egbe and its methods of approach as set out in its first constitution, which was drafted by me with the collaboration of one of its founders. Now, I'm wondering if I should read this because of time, but guess what? We're not in a hurry, are we? So let's read a bit. The aims of the association are divided into two categories. Now, I want you to listen to this very carefully so that you understand where Yoruba people made mistake, or if we made mistakes, and then you can tell us. And if we made mistakes, then we'll gladly acknowledge our fault. And I'm saying our because I'm speaking for the ancestors. Let's go back to this. The aims of the association are divided into two categories. A, Yorùbáland. Under A, number 1, to study fully its political problems, combat the disintegrating forces of tribalism, stamp out discrimination within the group and against minorities, and generally infuse the idea of a single nationality throughout the region. Why is this important? So, like I always say, the Yoruba identity is not a new identity. The Yoruba identity is at least, not at most, at least 5,000 years old. And we can explain this archaeologically, we can explain this culturally, we can explain this mythically and historically. We can explain it in different forms, all right? But archaeologically, which is scientifically, it's at least 5,000 years old. In other words, around 2,800 BC, the identity was already formed. And this you will find in a book called, two books, but let me give you one. Yoruba, The New History by Akinwumi Ogundiran. You see the archaeological data and how it's been a long time coming. However, Papa was born in 1909. Less than 20 years before he was born, we just ended Kiriji War, where we had a civil war for 16 years. And having fought for that long, we had animosities amongst ourselves. People had issues, there was tribalism, there was discrimination from one group to another, which is understandable because many groups fought I'm talking intra-ethnic war, like amongst ourselves. People talk about Nigerian civil war, it was about 30 months. We fought amongst ourselves for 16 years, which is the reason Yoruba people don't usually fight. It's not because we cannot fight, it's because we know everybody will know the beginning of the war. You don't know where it's going to end. We don't fight until it's absolutely important, and when we do, it's decisive. And I think that a bunch of cowards or clowns who think that recklessness means bravery are the ones who think that means, that not wanting to fight means you're afraid. No, it's not. It doesn't mean that. You can literally just destroy everything. But having gone through that, we now had issues. So by 1945, at this point, Papa was 36 years old, right? Yeah. He was 36 years old at this point. The bickering still existed. The discrimination amongst us as Yoruba people still existed. Again, fresh from the war. Although we had settled the war, we still had issues from those long years, of Wala. Now, one of the primary reason, number one reason of, establishing Egbe Ọmọ Odùduwà was to ensure that they could erase that idea and regain the idea of common identity. I mean, we all, literally it's in the name, Ẹgbẹ Ọmọ Odùduwà. We can all trace our ancestry to one person. We all have this in common. We have the same identity, the same ethnicity, the same language, the same everything. Why exactly are we fighting? So the very first thing is to unite the Yoruba people. Not to give them an identity, contrary to what some loaf are saying. I get triggered when people say things about Yoruba people anyhow. They say, oh, you don't have any identity. It was no. Just because you don't have a common ancestor does not mean that's the story of Yoruba people. Like, we do have a common ancestor. And yes, we have heroes in our history as well, unlike some. But let's get back to this book. So the first thing is it said the aims of the association are divided into two categories. Number one, Yorùbáland. Yorùbáland. Number one, to study fully its political problems, combat the disintegrating forces of tribalism, stamp out discrimination within the group and against minorities, and generally infuse the idea of a single nationality throughout the region. Number two, to study its economic resources, ascertain its potentialities, and advise as to the wisest utilization of its wealth, so as to ensure abundance and prosperity for its people. Number three, to plan for the improvement of educational facilities, both in content and extent, to explore the means of introducing mass education promptly and efficiently, and to foster the study of Yoruba language, culture, and history. Now you understand why, as soon as he became premier, he ensured that they started doing this thing. They wrote this in 1945. Free education started in Yorùbáland in 1955. Let's continue. Number 4, to promote the social welfare of Yorùbáland, combat the cankerworm of superstition and ignorance, spread the knowledge of medical relief, and stimulate the provision of hospitals, maternity homes, and such like amenities. That's also why we had free healthcare since the 50s. Now let's get into the other part. The other part is Nigeria. So when they started Ẹgbẹ Ọmọ Odùduwà, they had a two-pronged approach. The first one was Yoruba-centric or Yoruba-focused. The second one was Nigerian-focused. So this is a bit about Nigeria. So B, Nigeria. Number 1, to cooperate in the fullest measures with other regions to see that the aims set out in A are applied to the whole country. I thought that was altruistic. Number 2, to aid and encourage similar groups in the other regions in every way possible to achieve these ideals. In other words, as we are doing it for ourselves, we would like you to also have it for yourself. As you are growing, you should also grow. And I've said it several times. Every region in Nigeria and the people from those regions are products of the prevailing political ideology that their leaders had in the 50s and 60s or in the 40s. Let me even take it back to the 40s. Whatever prevailing political ideology that existed in your region in the 40s, 50s, and 60s is literally what you are playing out today. There's no group in Nigeria that is, and I'm not saying this because of any ethnic group or anything. The former president even mentioned it the other day, talking about what Awolowo did in terms of democracy in Yorùbáland, in Southwest. The idea of altruism is literally embedded in the way we play politics. So you are thinking, and maybe that's why I'm always telling us that when you're thinking about what you want to do in Nigerian politics, you have to think for the other groups. And I know people will say things, and they always say it, why should I think for the other groups? I want to talk about what I want. What differentiates you from other groups is your ability to actually reason beyond self as a Yoruba person. So even from the very beginning, this was not a political party, this was Ẹgbẹ Ọmọ Odùduwà. They were thinking of, okay, whatever we want to achieve as Yoruba people, would like you to also have it in your region. So want to support you in any way possible. That's a good idea, isn't it? Like, this is how a sensible, omoluabi, normal human being should think. Let me just ask, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Papa is even wrong. Maybe all of them, Dr. Kerry, maybe they were wrong. In the comment section, please let me know. Does this look like a good plan, like for yourself and for the whole, for the collective, for Nigeria, and then for Yorùbáland? Does this look like a very good plan, or is it tribalistic, like they always say? I'm waiting for answers. I want to have some engagement on this for a bit. It's a good plan. Thank you very much. I got one answer. I will take one with God's the majority. So it says, oh, okay, all of you are writing now. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, good. So methods of approach. A, by studying problems affecting Yorùbáland in particular and Nigeria in general through 1, research, 2, lectures, 3, paper reading, and 4, discussion. B, by disseminating the knowledge thus gained and conclusions reached among the people in Yorùbáland and Nigeria by the following means. 1, the propagation of the idea of a modern Yoruba state and a federal state of Nigeria through the agency of reliable persons who share our ideals. Papa was talking about federalism in 1945, which is why you don't get surprised when you read his book, A Path to Freedom, that was published in 1947. It was saying exactly the same thing. Number 2, the issuing of magazines, booklets, and other publications in English and Yoruba. Number 3, the encouragement of the immediate setting up of Egbe Ọmọ Odùduwà in Yorùbáland, provided the promoters give an undertaking that the first 3 years will be devoted to strengthening the organization financially and studying local problems, while refraining from any direct political action. Before the Egbe was founded in London in 1945, there was already a 2-year-old branch of the Ibo Federal Union there. That means the Ibo branch was in London in 1943. That doesn't mean they started in 43. It just meant that they already had a branch in London. Yoruba did not have any group at all. Before the Egbe was founded in London in 1945, there was already a 2-year-old branch of the Ibo Federal Union there. Even so, the reaction of practically all the students from the eastern region and of some from the western region, to the formation of the Egbe was a hostile one. Being the most prominent among the founders, I was singled out for attack. I was accused of being tribalistic and of having a design to wreck the unity of Nigeria. These are the people you are living with. I'm not saying anybody is bad. I'm just saying understand your neighbors. You have a branch of your ethnic association in London. I'm starting my ethnic association in the same London. You are calling me tribalistic. And guess what? They had some Yoruba people to also agree with their nonsense, which is what you see today in Nigerian politics. You can't speak. You are tribalistic. But what you have been accused of doing is not even this. I read to you the plan of Ibo State Union. I didn't finish it. I didn't finish it intentionally. Just a bit about trying to conquer everywhere. And the plan, they had a 20-year plan from 1944. I now read to you what the Yoruba Union had in 1945 for Yorùbáland and for Nigeria. You wrote in the comment section that it's a very good plan. You heard what they had in store for Nigeria, and you saw how everything was about dominating everybody. Who exactly should be shut up, should be shut down? The reason they didn't want the Yoruba people to have a union is because it's because the only thing some people think about is competition, and they see that thing as a threat. That's it. So you have your, let me read part of it. I won't go deep into it because of that's not the topic. You have a plan to have the eastern minorities, Efik, Ibibio, everybody in Rivers, all the folks in Calabar, Goja, Rivers provinces, to be completely under control, to ensure, listen to what they say. They say their dreams for their own state have been completely shattered. Who shattered it? Zik and NCNC. We'll get to it in this series and how they did it. That's the group that is calling people tribalistic. For the folks in the Urobo, let me read Urobo Edo and the Shekiri plan. Despite the intrigues of Okotiebo and Omosage, we have succeeded in clamping Osadebe firmly on the Midwest saddle, thus taking care of the Urobo, Edo, and Ishekiri. As we read in this series, you're going to discover how Benin, that was supposed to produce the leaders. All right, where was I? Benin was supposed to be the capital, but beyond being the capital, it was supposed to be that since they were the majority in the Midwest, they would produce the political leadership of the Midwest. But that's not what happened. What they said here is that we have succeeded in clamping Osadebe firmly on the Midwest saddle, thus taking care of the Urobo, Edo, and Ishekiri. That was how a minority got to rule in a space where the majority was ×2 of his own number in that region. Where was I? Okpara showed his hands too quickly last year, that was 1963, when he was overconfident that the census figures would be to our advantage and that the struggle was almost won. He should have pampered Fani Kayode till NCNC victory in the regional West elections was secure. I don't want to explain this because of time. But then, they talked about Yoruba people. They say, play up Awolowo at all times. They said, this will keep up the resistance of action group members, to stop them from uniting with the NNDP to form a solid Yoruba front. This is vital. Then it says about Sardauna, it says, we are happy that our protocol on cessation of newspaper attacks on Sardauna and other northern leaders have stopped. Amechi and Okafo are to be complimented so far. Everything must be done to appear to appease the Sardauna and Ribadu, but Balewa we can always deal with. The people who have this kind of plan for Nigeria in 1944 are threatened by the Yorubas who have the other plan that we read earlier for themselves and for Nigeria. Why? Because from the very beginning, it was not about growth. It was about domination. Which was why Oyema said it in 45. The same year, Ẹgbẹ Ọmọ Odùduwà was founded in London. But Oyema said what he said in Nigeria. So you understand why you'd be against it and call it tribalistic. Let's continue. Being the most prominent among the founders, I was singled out for attack. I was accused of being tribalistic and of having a design to wreck the unity of Nigeria. In the face of the aims and objects of the Egbe, which were widely circulated among Nigerian students in the United Kingdom, these accusations did not make any sense to me. It did not have to make sense. The accusations did not have to make sense. All the same, I seized... Now listen to Papa, see what he did. All the same, I seized every opportunity that offered itself to explain these aims and objects or objectives to my detractors. The executive committee of the Egbe also decided to hold a joint meeting with the executive committee of the London branch of the Ibo Federal Union, with a view to making to the latter a full explanation of what the Egbe stood for and to driving the point home that the Egbe was purely and simply the Yoruba counterpart of the Ibo Federal Union. I made contact with the chairman of the Ibo Federal Union, Mr. Chuba Ikpazu, a law student, through my friend, Mr. G on UEK, another law student, and a date for a meeting between the committees was fixed. Somehow, about 24 hours before the time of the meeting, Somehow, about 24 hours before the time of the meeting, Mr. Ikpazu sent a message to say that he and his officers had another important engagement, which made it possible for them to attend, which would not make it possible for them to attend the proposed meeting. He promised to let us have another date. He was unable to fulfill his promise before we all returned home to Nigeria. Let me say this. Since I'll use the word, and I think you get the point. Awolowo is our father, Abi. Since our father did that thing in 1945, it will never happen again. The idea of explaining yourself to people who are trying to gaslight you is never going to happen again. And I think they're even doing Omoluabi. It's still Omoluabi to just shut people up, because how can you have why should I have a meeting to explain to you the reason for my organization after I have already sent you the objectives printed or sent to everybody? You saw the objectives. Number one, even if you did not see the objectives, what's your business with what I'm doing? When you were doing your own, did I ask you for stuff? No, I did not ask you. Meanwhile, what you had planned was demonic. And guess what? Every single region was planned for. This is the thing that we must be careful about. By the way, every time I pause like that, please try and understand. It's because we also have to be measured. If you are planning, so you have your ethnic group meeting, you have a plan. You know what? Let me read something to you. I'm coming back to this book. I hope I remember this page. Let me find the page. Okay. Let me read something to you from Anthony Nauro. He gave a speech in 1968. And I want to read to you what he said about the Ibo Federal Union and what made it different from the Ibo Union and other unions that were available at the time. By the way, if you are Ghanaian and you are here, I'm Yoruba. I'm on your side. Anything that you see that is different is because I'm Yoruba. Where was I? Mumbo. One second. This is from Beautiful. This is from Anthony Nauro, 12th August 1968. It was a speech he gave at Addis Ababa. In 1947, when the Richards Constitution was being considered, who is Richards? The man we talked about earlier, Sir Arthur Richards, the former governor of Nigeria. By 1947, when the Richards Constitution was being considered in government circles in Lagos and the Colonial office in London, ethnic group consciousness had become a fact of life in Nigeria. The first ethnic cultural organization, the Ibo Union, was born, he said at this time, but it was before this time actually. Others sprang up, but like the Ibo Union, became more political in character and the pioneer, became more political in character than the pioneer Ibibio Union. Unfortunately, Sir Arthur Richards ignored the diversity of the cultures and peoples of Nigeria, and a federation of 3 massive regions was imposed on Nigerians on 2nd August 1946, when the Richards Constitution was promulgated. Agitation for ethnic group self-determination and cultural sovereignty grew in the late 1940s. Events fed the flames, listen to this, events fed the flames of agitation. In 1945, a prominent Igbo lawyer, Charles Onyema, a member of the Central Legislative Council, said in a public statement in Lagos that the Igbo domination of Nigeria was only a matter of time. These statements sparked off attacks on Igbos in other parts of Nigeria. When you hear about the crisis of 1945, it happened because of that statement. I've not said this here before, but I'm telling you now. That thing that happened in the north in 1945 happened because of Onyema's statement in Lagos. Which is why I tell these people that are insulting Ghanaians and everybody on social media, when they beat people that on ground, you will not be there, but you will feel it. You go feel them. How does that sing? Then go feel it. That's David Oba. You go feel it. So he says, in 1945, a prominent Igbo lawyer, Charles Onyema, a member of the Central Legislative Council, said in a public statement in Lagos that the Igbo domination of Nigeria was only a matter of time. These statements sparked off attacks on Igbos in other parts of Nigeria. These statements intensified the growth of ethnic and cultural unions throughout Nigeria. There sprang up the Edo Union, the Calabar Improvement League, the Ẹgbẹ Ọmọ Odùduwà, the Ijaw Progressive Union, and so on. The fear of domination of the rest of Nigeria by any one ethnic group reinforced the search for a form of government in Nigeria which would prevent it. And that is why in 1947, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, a Yoruba, in his book Path to Nigerian Freedom, suggested the division of Nigeria into 40 states with cultural and linguistic affinity as the basis of division. But Oyibo did not listen to Papa. Let's go back to Papa's book now. We're going back to the autobiography of Chief Awolowo. So that was in 45 when they created the group. They were going to have meetings with the Igbos to explain to them why Yoruba also have rights to have. Yoruba don't suffer. The last group that any Yoruba person should explain himself to are the Igbos, respectfully speaking, the last group. When the Egbe was founded in London, copies of its constitution were sent to Obas, chiefs, and outstanding Yorubas with an accompanying letter in which an appeal was made to them to found a similar organization at home. And of course, it mentioned how Oba Sir Adesoji Aderemi, the owner of Ife, and the president of the Western House of Chiefs, and 3 other persons reached out to him to respond to what they were trying to do. On my return home, it gets interesting, go stay with me. On my return home, I began in earnest to preach the formation of the Egbe. People listened to me either with concealed indifference or undisguised boredom. Then one day in 1948, I read in the papers that Egbe Ọmọ Odùduwà had been formed in Lagos by a group of outstanding Yoruba leaders: Sir Adeyemo Alakija, Dr. Akinola Maja, Sir Kofa Bayomi, Chief Bode Thomas, Chief H.O. Davis, Dr. Akin Doherty, and others too numerous to mention were among the foundation members. I was jubilant to read this report, and I quickly sent a telegram of felicitations to the Lagos founders of the Egbe. I also took immediate steps to inaugurate a branch in Ibadan. The aims and objectives of the newly formed Egbe were identical with those of the one founded in London, with but slight modifications. The aims and objectives of the newly formed Egbe were identical with those of the one founded in London, with but some slight modifications. The new organization pledged itself to A, to encourage, especially by means of scholarship awards by the society, the pursuit of secondary and university education among Yoruba boys and girls. B, to recognize and maintain the monarchical and other similar institutions of Yorùbáland, to plan for their complete enlightenment and democratization. And C, to strive earnestly to cooperate with other ethnical associations in matters of common interest to all Nigerians, so as thereby to attain unity in federation. The reaction of Dr. Azikiwe and all his supporters to the newly the reaction of Dr. Azikiwe and all his supporters to the newly formed Egbe was violent beyond compare. Just like what happened in London in 45, worse things happened in 48 in Lagos, in Yorùbáland though. Remember, all the leaders of the Egbe were vilified in Dr. Azikiwe's newspapers. The high watermark of the campaign was reached in the following extract from an editorial article in the Pilot of September 8, 1948. This is what they wrote in the West African Pilot. West African Pilot was a newspaper that was published by Zik, who, by the way, was the head of the Ibo Federal Union. This is actually worse than what happened in London. See, London, they were a branch. The general Ibo Kini, like the group all over the world, the union was headed by the man who owns the paper, who is about to publish what I'm about to read. Listen and be blessed. But now that the Egbe has made it clear, this is September 8, 1948. Now that the Egbe has made it clear that its battle is not really against Dr. Azikiwe personally, and even against Ibo as a group, but against the aspirations of the 27 million Nigerians backing up the NCNC. The time has come for real action. Henceforth, the cry must be one of battle against the Ẹgbẹ Ọmọ Odùduwà, its leaders at home and abroad, up hill and down dale, in the streets of Nigeria and in the residence of its advocates. The Ẹgbẹ Ọmọ Odùduwà is the enemy of Nigeria. It must be crushed to the earth. There is no going back until the fascist organization of Sir Adeyemo Alakija has been dismembered. How do you talk to Yoruba people having a Yoruba organization in Yorùbáland like this? You say it must be crushed to the earth. It's a fascist organization. There is no going back. It's against Nigeria, 27 million people backing NCNC. So let me tell you what they did. They switched it from Azikiwe and Ibo and switched it to a political party. But the goal remains the same: crush this Yoruba organization. This was in Lagos. This was not in Aba. This was not in Onitsha. This was in Yorùbáland. Let's continue. Apart from newspaper attacks, there were also physical assaults on the persons of the leaders of the Egbe and damage to the houses and other property of some of them. Why? They said, let me say what they said. They said the crime must be one of battle. This is not different from obedient movement. They are the same. The crime must be one of battle against Egbe Ọmọ Odùduwà and its members, its leaders at home and abroad, up hill and down dale, in the streets of Nigeria and in the residence of its advocates. What does that mean? Destroy them, hurt them. What do you mean go to their residences? Why are you mentioning the leaders and the members? Why are you saying it's a battle that must be taken to their houses? Are you going there to pray? Apart from newspaper attacks, there were also physical assaults on the persons of the leaders of the Egbe and damage to the houses and other property of some of them. It was absolutely impossible on nationalist grounds to reconcile Dr. Azikiwe's insensate hostility to the Egbe with his presidency of the Ibo Federal Union and his obvious condonation. Listen to this. Number one, there's the hostility against Egbe. But number two, he was the president of Ibo Federal Union. But guess what? Number three, his obvious condonation. He condoned the existence of a similar organization founded in the northern region in May of 1948, which is called Jamia Mutanen Arewa, that became MPC in 51. So in that 48, there was Arewa in the north. Azikiwe had nothing against it. There's a pattern, guys. This was in 48, right? By 57, the same Zik was saying, leave the north, leave the east, break the west into four. Am I saying this to weaponize history? No, I'm telling you that whatever happened is happening. And you've got to understand how to deal with it. So you don't feel like, it's happening for the first time. Kimaashe. There's a way your fathers treated some people's stupidity. You've got to do the same thing by dusting up the books and reading what they did. Besides, in spite of his protestations to the contrary, Dr. Azikiwe was himself an unabashed Igbo jingoist, and he gave the game completely away when he said inter alia in his presidential address to the Igbo Federal Union in 1949 as follows. Please listen to what he had to say to his own people.